we're gonna talk about Pettersson, but we also need to talk about his line mates. Because I texted this to you and Grady last night while we were all watching the game. It just feels like right now, Andrei Kuzmenko is using like Jay Beagle's sticks right now. As soon as the puck touches his stick, offense dies. Like the offense just dies as soon as the puck gets to Andrei Kuzmenko. And like I said, I don't know if it's he's using the old Jay Beagle line. I don't know what's going on right now, but when you're Elias Pettersson and you're clearly going through something, Patrick Johnson was on Scaris and Price today, and he wonders if it's a groin injury ailing Elias Pettersson, because as Dave also pointed out, he is going down easier than we're used to. Like, Pettersson's obviously, he does go down often, I think, more than most players, but right now it's just like he looks like Bambi sometimes. It's crazy how Elias Pettersson's going down so easily, and Patrick wonders if it's a groin thing. Again, I don't know what it is, but something's clearly bugging Elias Pettersson. So I just, when you're struggling the way he is right now, you need your line mates to be going. And right now, I don't think Ilya Mikheyev or especially Andrei Kuzmenko are going right now.
Well, I don't think you can point the finger at Mikheyev because
Exactly.
he's not supposed to drive that line. He's a complementary piece. And since he's returned to the Canucks' lineup, he's tied with Quinn Hughes for the team lead with 6-5-5 goals.
Mhm.
He also leads the team in that stretch in terms of 5-5 shots and high danger chances. So he's doing as good of a job as he can. 10 points in 16 games. For me, the big sort of problem outside of Pettersson is Kuzmenko. Now at this rate, I think first of all, we all know that if this continues, I don't think Kuzmenko is going to be allowed back in Bali for another summer.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess no. Yeah,
but watching him play right now, it seems as if even when he's making a nifty little maneuver, it's sort of done in a situation where, okay, he might create space in one spot, but he's not in a prime offensive situation to actually turn it into a scoring chance. Yep. It just feels like he's not getting enough puck touches in quality locations, especially on the inside. For example, the backdoor tap-ins have practically disappeared. He's not getting any of those sorts of looks, which it's tough to sort of determine, okay, how much of that is also tethered to Pettersson himself struggling, because Pettersson, we all know, is the main straw that stirs the drink for that line. And what Pettersson does so well when he's at his best is he's able to draw multiple defenders towards him like a magnet, and that allows Kuzmenko to sort of fly under the radar and find that soft ice. So for as much as Kuzmenko is struggling to have these dynamic flashes, I also wonder how much of it is, okay, if Pettersson isn't able to create extra space for his line mates, like it almost hinders Kuzmenko's ability to cook as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I just wonder with Kuzmenko, we've pointed out that Pettersson is obviously the straw that stirs the drink. I almost said the stir that stirs. Anyways, but Grady, you had something you wanted to say. I waiting for you there.
Yeah, no, I've just noticed a couple times when Kuzmenko, like, he'll dance himself into position and he'll open up space, but when he's about to get his shot off, he stops moving his feet and almost becomes too stationary. And there was a play last night where defender just kind of closed in on him, and I forget if they like lifted his stick or just got their stick on his, but he just seems like he doesn't realize how much time he has to get the shot off, and he's kind of just stuck there, and it's almost too late, and he can't quite separate himself from that defender to kind of close in and get the shot off.
It reminds me a lot of what we heard from Talkit about making the move, and then you're not in a prime scoring opportunity. You make the move, and then you have another wall to go through, and then you're kind of stuck. You don't have anywhere to go from there. It's just, look, Talkit didn't necessarily say that was about Kuzmenko, but he did say in the same press conference, or the press conference the day before, that Kuzmenko's got to pick it up. Like that was the quote from Talkit, is he was asked about if it was a benching. Yeah, Kuzi's got to pick it up. That's what he said. That is what Rick Talkit said about Andrei Kuzmenko, and I think it's very hard to disagree right now. But on the other hand, sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say what Talkit was sort of referencing in terms of you make one nice dazzling move, but then you've got another obstacle to get through, which is difficult. So it's not really turning into a scoring chance. That applies not only for Kuzmenko, but for Pettersson as well, because the last handful of games, anytime I do see him finally sort of beating a defender in one-on-one situation, it's as if he's in a spot where he's entering the offensive zone closer to the wall, and he has another player that he has to beat, and then it's the second guy that is stripping him of the puck in a lot of these situations.
A lot of interaction in the chat right now. People are asking if Pettersson might just be sad. So let's get to our poll question. Our poll question, yeah, people are, is Pettersson sad? That's what Sour Laundry said.
Why would he be sad? They're winning boatloads of hockey games.
He's not playing great, and that's what we're going to talk about. Elias Pettersson is the subject of our Atlas Goods poll question. Bring it up here, Grady. Brought to you by our friends over at Atlas Goods. Go to atlasgds.com. Use promo code CC15 for 15% off your first order of pop rinds. Best fresh pork rind straight from your microwave or air fryer. Our poll question today: are you at all worried about Elias Pettersson? Yes, starting to worried, not worried, and as always, I'm angry. 43%, the majority of the vote, Harmon, say I am starting to worry about Elias Pettersson. 33% of people say I'm not worried, and 22% just say flat out, yes, I am worried about Elias Pettersson. So if you combine yes and the starting to worry crowd, there are more people worrying about Elias Pettersson or close to worrying about Elias Pettersson than there are people who are not worried about Elias Pettersson. 2% say they are angry.
I think Grady just wants to quickly chime in on PD.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Have you guys noticed, like, the last few games, he's just falling over so much?
Yeah.
And at 5-on-5, like, he's just not opening up space for himself, like, you know, projecting the next play before it happens, kind of, you know, envisioning, okay, here's where the puck needs to go. Here's where I need Kuzmenko to be at backdoor. We're not just seeing that, like, cerebral, you know, ability for him to kind of see things happen before they do.
This has been happening for a while. 4 points in his last 7 games, a -8 plus-minus rating during that stretch of time, and just 1 goal in his past 7 games. And, you know, plus-minus is obviously a bit of a flawed stat. We talk about that all the time. But last night, on the ice for 3 goals against, 2 of which were at even strength. That's not what we're used to seeing from Elias Pettersson. Great, I think you make a great point about him falling over a little bit more and it being kind of noticeable. Makes you wonder if it's a lower body thing. Like we said, PJ threw that out on Sakaris and Price today. Makes you wonder. I don't know what's wrong with him, but there is something clearly off with Elias Pettersson right now. He's like, we've seen this for a while this season now, but Harmon, what was the conversation you and I had the first week you were here doing the show? Was right now we're seeing Pettersson clearly not at his best in terms of like two-way ability and everything we're used to seeing from Pettersson, but he's still putting up points. And he was doing it even though we knew he wasn't at 100%. He didn't look like himself. He was still finding a way to pick up points. We talked about how Connor McDavid's done that in years past. When he goes through tough stretches, he's still putting up points. Now the points aren't coming for Elias Pettersson. So are you worried about Elias Pettersson, Harmon?
Worry might be too strong of a word, but I am a tad concerned. I'm starting to get a tad concerned. Watching him play right now, the biggest difference, in addition to what we've already mentioned, is that he just doesn't look dangerous when he's taking defenders on in one-on-one situations. When Pettersson's at his best, it's not that he's necessarily flying by defenders in those spots, but he's able to make a lot of plays in high traffic despite it.
Yeah.
And it just sort of feels like right now, he lacks the explosiveness with his skating. Look, we know he's not Connor McDavid, but he's still a lot of times able to, in the past, pick up steam and pull away, stop up, pull up off of an entry, create plays that way, and then rely on his cerebral vision. First of all, I don't think he's creating enough separation for himself with the skating right now. And then secondly, in these high traffic situations, when he doesn't have a lot of spot to maneuver the puck, he's mishandling it a lot more than usual. Whereas when he's at his best, his stick handling is so precise and it feels like he can stick handle in a phone booth. It does not matter how much pressure a defender is applying on him. It doesn't matter how good a defender's gap control is when he's defending Pettersson on the rush. When Pettersson's at his best, he's still able to make plays in those situations. And right now, I see a combination of A, he just doesn't have the dynamic skating to separate and create space, and B, Normally, he might be able to overcome that with his stick handling, and right now it feels like he's just mishandling it, turning it over in spots that he doesn't normally do. There's obviously going to be a lot of discussion around this idea that, okay, if he's working through this undisclosed ailment, do you rest him at some point? It is interesting to sort of look at other situations around the league. I just don't think stars like to take
No.
that break at all. I mean,
No.
Dave mentioned Kaprizov in Minnesota. That's been huge, and it's a massive reason why the Wild are struggling. But also Austin Matthews last year was working through his wrist injury, did not look the same, especially in the first half of the season at all. And a lot of Leafs fans were clamoring, hey, the regular season doesn't even matter for us. It's the playoffs that are what's actually at stake here. Give him a break, shut him down. And Matthews just kept sort of playing, and then it was down the stretch when he finally started to look like himself again. Connor McDavid right now, and of course that's a little bit of a different situation because the Oilers are desperate for points, but he missed some time with injury. Clearly, I think returned a little bit too early and does not look like himself at all. It just feels like stars don't like these things, and he's also got a contract he's playing for, so I don't know. It's not an easy situation to navigate, but at the same time, when you do bring that up and referencing Kaprizov, there's also a point at which you go, if he's not really moving the needle, what's the point of having him sort of in the lineup? At some point, the risk to reward just isn't there compared to if you rest him and hopefully have him heal a little bit.
The Canucks are playing a lot of hockey right now, and that obviously can't be good for whatever is affecting Elias Pettersson, but you just brought up resting him. I was looking at the schedule to try to see if there was any stretch of games where it might make sense or where there is a game where you could say, okay, you're going to rest this game. I think it's next week. Like, I think next week is the Canucks' only chance to really get in front of this if they want to. Like, if he's still saying, I'm good to go, but the Canucks want to say, you know what? This can't hurt you to have this little bit of rest. We're going to rest you. You've got to do it next weekend, because what's happening next weekend is on Thursday, the Canucks play the Vegas Golden Knights. Thursday, November 30th, they play the Vegas Golden Knights. On the 2nd of December, they are in Calgary, but then they don't play again until the 5th when New Jersey is in town. Also note that I said in Calgary. So that's a 1-game road trip, and you're playing the Calgary Flames. Look, I get it's hockey in Canada. I understand Elias Pettersson wants to play in every game if he's capable, right? But what we learned last night, Harman, is that when he's not at his best, the Canucks are just not able to beat teams like the Colorado Avalanche. Beat these really upper echelon teams. They're just not good enough to do it. And that's fine. The president of the team said at the start of the year, if everything goes perfectly, we have a playoff team. I'll tell you that Elias Pettersson putting up 4 points in his last 7 games is not the definition of perfect. That is not good news for this hockey club right now. So if you're going to do it, sit him out on that Saturday game on the 2nd. That's 5 days off for him to recover. He plays the Vegas game, plays against New Jersey on Tuesday. After the Vegas game, you just come out, you say, hey, Pettersson's day-to-day. Everybody's going to freak out, but he's day-to-day, and you get to actually, for once, you get to have a player actually be day-to-day and then come back a few days later. It's not day-to-day and then is day-to-day a month later or whatever. For Pettersson, that's the only stretch of the schedule that I'm looking at where I can see, okay, this might make sense, because there's basically an identical stretch the next weekend, but that Saturday game is against Carolina, and I don't think you want to be sitting Pettersson against the Carolina Hurricanes. So I think if they're going to do it, the chances next week, like next week is your time to do it. If you're going to rest this player to give him an extra chance to heal, you're going to do that next week, because there's no real break in the Canucks schedule until Christmas. And do you want another whole month of Elias Pettersson playing the way he is right now? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's also tough for us to discuss this and have strong takes when we don't really know the extent of what's going on.
Yeah, because
really at all.
If it were a groin injury, like, does 5 days even help you? Like, and let's say it's not groin, let's say it's wrist. Does 5 days really help you that much? Like, in my mind, it can't hurt. But again, we don't know the whole situation. But yeah, go on.
And while we are sort of, I think it's also important to clarify, while we are discussing this idea of what is he potentially playing through, Tuckett has, of course, referenced that he's like earlier in the season that he's been playing through something undisclosed. He's been banged up. He's taken maintenance days. So this isn't a case of us looking at Pettersson struggling, not looking like himself, and then reverse engineering. Oh, he must be hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
This is something that the coaching staff is at least indirectly alluded to themselves. Big picture, I think it does tell you a lot about this team. We're seeing a trend where the best version of the Canucks requires Pettersson and Miller to be firing at their best at the same time. You think about the stretch, like I'm going season by season since the Canucks have had Pettersson and Miller. So in 2019-20, they obviously make the playoffs, have the bubble run. Pettersson and Miller were both outstanding. That's a lotto line year. 2020-21 season, the 56 game All Canadian division year. Pettersson was totally out of sorts in the first half, went down with a wrist injury in the second half. JT also, that was probably one of his least effective seasons as a Canuck when you look at his point production, two-way play as well. So neither of them were really going. And of course, Canucks really struggled that year. 2021-22, JT Miller was a beast, had a 99-point season. But Pettersson, again, was really struggling, was awful in the first half of the season until finally picking it up through the last 30 games or so. And then last season, Pettersson was dominant. But guess what? For the first 50 games or so, until Rick Tocchet came in, JT Miller's two-way play was miserable. And now when you look at big picture, 20 games, how have the Canucks performed? Off to an excellent start. Well, guess what? For the most part, Miller and Pettersson have been dominant. So I think
it's like the first time that they've both been dominant
since
as Canucks.
2019-20, which was a really successful season for the team. So I think it just goes to show you that this team is going to go as far as Pettersson and Miller click at the same time, assuming of course that Hughes and Demko hold up and play to their potential as well.
We mentioned Patrick Johnson's reporting earlier on potential injuries for Pettersson. His latest article at the Province just dropped, and it's quote, he's suspected he's dealing with a groin problem, maybe a wrist injury too, which would make sense because we saw last night, like he got thrown out of a couple draws, but he just, what did he didn't take like his first draw, or Daniel Wagner had the stat, but basically like wasn't in the middle of the dots for a while there. And you haven't seen him just like do those inside out dekes, which would allude to a potential wrist injury, or Harm, you talked about like the separation earlier, which would allude to potentially the groin injury. So,
I was looking into that face-off thing. Pettersson got thrown out of 2 face-offs before that, and there was a lot of power play time, and obviously JT is going to take all the draws. So like I saw it from Wags. It was an interesting observation, but I'm not looking at that and saying, yeah, okay, this is proof that there's something wrong with the wrist. Like Jay Patton is hit last week with us, even said like Petey's out there taking face-off practice. Like he's choosing to go do this.
Extra drills.
I again, Grady, thanks for that chime in about PJ's article. I don't know if it's the wrist. It might be. We don't know what it is, but I don't know. Like it's something to keep an eye on, but that face-off one last night, the context there matters, I think.
Yeah. It's fair.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on Pettersson? I had a few things. Like I wrote down so much because I was thinking about this quite a bit. And like the one thing that I should also mention, and I'm sure people know this, is I think the reason we're talking about this is not only the low point totals in the last 7 games, but this is the first time this season Pettersson's gone more than 2 games without registering a point. And one of those games against San Jose. Like they played the San Jose Sharks and Elias Pettersson didn't get a point. And I lost daily face-off Survivor Fantasy because of it. Anyways.
Frank did too.
Yeah, so did a lot of people. Anyways. The thing I wonder the most is just we don't know what the injury is. So I know we mentioned this, but like who knows if this can even be fixed with a quick rest? And if it can't, like, like you don't want it to keep getting worse, right?
Yeah. But also the one thing we want to be careful about too is, yes, he struggled recently. Several games for sure, especially 5-on-5. But there's also an element of recency bias because overall, you look at the 20-game sample, and he's probably still been unless you want to argue, I mean, JT Miller, you could make the case for him, but over 20 games, he's still been arguably the team's best forward.
Yep.
Not just in terms of what he's done offensively, but even the 5-on-5 sort of 2-way numbers for the season as a whole, they've definitely slipped lately, which is why we're having this conversation.
Exactly.
But for the season as a whole, yes, they're not at the dominant level that we're used to seeing from Pettersson, but they're still, for instance, they're still significantly better than the Miller Lines' numbers. This is still a player that when he's on the ice
on the season, not
season,
lately.
yes,
Okay,
on the
just making
season,
sure, yeah.
the Canucks have been out shooting and out chancing their opponents. And I also wonder, other parts of the lineup have also had, we've talked a lot about the PDO bender. I also wonder how much of it is, well, the Pettersson line has absolutely come back down to earth in a huge way in terms of how many of their shots and chances they are converting on, because lately in the last few games, Kuzmenko, for example, has had some good looks and he's missed the type of chances he normally buries. So I wonder how much the perception would be, like, it'd still be something we'd be noticing, observing that, hey, Pettersson and Kuzmenko don't look right. They don't look effective. And certainly the underlying numbers of the last handful of games back that up. But I wonder if it wouldn't be as alarming if Kuzmenko, for example, was finishing some of the chances that we're used to seeing him finish.
If only. Like, if only. I feel like I need to talk about it more. I've really not been impressed with Kuzmenko lately. Like, either end of the ice, the defensive game we knew isn't fantastic, but offense is just every time the puck touches his stick, you can bank on the play dying. It's crazy. Like, it's bananas right now what we're seeing. Like, has he created any offense in the last 5 games? Like him himself carrying the puck in, making a smart play past the red line. Once? Like, can you think of one instance? Like, I can't. I know I'm being a little dramatic right now, but, like, my goodness, you're not... This is not what you want to see from Andrei Kuzmenko, and I don't know how much longer of a leash he gets, to be quite honest with you, on that line. But I don't think there's much of a better answer. Like, we didn't even talk about PDG. Like, he had a bad game as well. Anthony Beauvillier, who looks like he's playing well right now. Good article right now over at CanucksArmy.com where Jeff Patterson spoke with Beauvillier. I don't know. Like, Beauvillier is probably replacing PDG. So who goes up to replace Kuzmenko? Like Connor Garland?
No, you're not going to break up that
exactly.
line. He's been driving the bottom 6. There was a funny tweet that Chester Ming had. Grady, can you bring that up, please? It was sort of alluding to Beauvillier and Garland and Joshua and all these types. Chester said the Canucks' PDO regression is basically watching Bluger, Garland, Joshua, and Beauvillier generate 1 billion scoring chances a game and never scoring.
That's true.
It's so true.
Can you run the numbers on that, Harmon? Is that accurate?
Man, by the way, speaking of PDO, their PDO is 95.8 in the last 7 games in which they've gone 3-4.
So now they went from being lucky to now categorically unlucky.
Yes.
That's the Canucks, baby. That's the Canucks. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.